All right, I'm here with Dr. Joseph Antoun. He is the CEO of L-Nutra, also the former Director of Health and Policy from the University of Chicago, and the former Editor-in-Chief of Journal of Health Systems and Reform. Dr. Joseph Antoun, welcome to the show, brother.
Hi, Joel. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, man. I am so excited to geek out with you today, all things fasting and caloric restriction, because that is the hot topic. We see it all over Instagram right now. All Listen, everyone has been talking about fasting and how great it is for your health. No doubt about it. But now we have so-called influencers on Instagram saying, yeah, you need to be fasting and because it induces autophagy, the cleaning of your cells. I see a lot of experts actually telling these people they're full of crap, and
Yeah,
actually all they're doing is it's caloric restriction and it has nothing to do with autophagy, the actual cleaning of your cells.
yeah,
Can you please help me get me some clarity and tell me what is the truth? How do we understand this?
yeah. Just to tell your followers, we've been doing fasting studies for 23 years. Have deployed over $36 million in fasting studies. We do mice. We have over 60 or 70 mice trials on fasting and over 34 clinical human trials on fasting. So what we're going to talk about today is the true science. It's not that I'm not going to push a book, my book, or I haven't written one book. I've published in top medical journals, and we're going to talk about the truth and clean that slate for everyone.
This is so
So
good because, and a lot of people will say, oh, well, that was done in a mice study or that was done in a petri dish. It wasn't done on humans. And you have 34 human studies. So this is going
34
to be
randomized clinical
perfect.
trials, and they're all done at Stanford, USC, UCLA, University of Palermo, Heidelberg, Leiden, the top big universities in every country. So 18 universities doing the trials, and we publish a lot of them, and others are being published now. So we'll clear that slate for you. So number one is very important to distinguish between intermittent fasting and prolonged fasting. Intermittent fasting starts from 0 hours, no food, all the way to 2 days. It's very important because people got stuck on the 16 hours. And why we classify 0 to 2 days as intermittent? Because at that stage, yes, the body is acting a little bit more as a calorie restriction, meaning, I skipped eating, I have a calorie deficit, and then it triggers some defense in the body where glycogen. So I always compare the body with no food as a company with no revenues. You go to the bank account, right? And you have the checking account, you go to it, super easy to take money from it. So the body goes to glycogen stored across the body, and a lot of it also in muscle and liver. So glycogen first, fat second. Fat is your savings accounts. And then you can apply for a credit. So that's the liver. The liver does the glucogenesis, and that's your credit account. So checking, savings, glycogen, fat, and then liver. You have most people, let's not generalize, most people have enough to go up to 2 days. Now, again,
You're
you
talking about enough glycogen
glycogen, fat,
or
and
fat.
then neoglucogenesis, and the liver dumps in at the later stage, right? So you have enough reserve to most people. We're going to talk about people with fast metabolism. They're very skinny. They go into crisis a little bit earlier, right? So people who have a lot of fat, they slow metabolism, then they can go after. But let me just, for the sake of the discussion, say many of us or most of us would have enough for that 48 hours. So, and it should all make sense. So, same example, you're the president of a company, you went to your bank account, there's no revenues, and you're seeing your bank account depleting and still no sales. What are you going to do after that period of time? You're going to say, I'm going to restructure the company, right? I have to fix, I have to cut some budgets, extra budgets, I have to protect my best employees. I have to reshape marketing so it helps sales and create revenue. So you'll do the right thing. You will focus on the priorities. And this is what autophagy is. Now, the biggest issue, there's two big problems. Once I clear them, you'll get your answers on fasting. One big problem is people thought you get into autophagy at hour 16 or 18 or so let's explain autophagy. Autophagy happens in the body all the time. The cells, some cells are rejuvenating, some cells are spoiled, some at a very low rate. But there's autophagy happening every second of the day. Once you increase demand, caloric demand on the body, either by fasting or by very high intensive exercise, you're putting pressure on the cell. The cell says, okay, if there's enough fat, I'm good. I can borrow the ketones. and glycogen and glycogen. Otherwise, if I go to crisis, there's no more. I'll start having to eat the debris, and I'll start looking inside and start rejuvenating from the inside. So the biggest issue with intermittent fasting is people thought that it would happen in the first 2 days. With autophagy, people thought it would happen the first 2 days. Autophagy, most of it, again, it's a gradual thing. It's happening all the time, increase a bit, but the true significant increase happen after the second or the third day for most people. And it's very serendipitous because the NIH now has deployed in 8 universities in the US a machine to measure autophagy because why there's speculation because nobody knows when autophagy happens in humans.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got yesterday, so this is very significant. Yesterday, we just got the prolonged autophagy results on the first machine. I think we did in the University of San Antonio. And we are seeing this huge spike of autophagy influx at day 4, right?
Wow.
Day 3 to 4. So it proves, and day 1 to 2, the control group who ate normal has the same level of autophagy than the day 1 and day 2. Makes sense. If you're a CEO of a company, I come to you and say, hey, you needed money. Sorry, I'll give you the check in 4 hours. So that's skipping breakfast and prolonging for it, right? It's like you'll wait 4 hours. You're not going to fire people and fix and restructure. Max, you'll borrow a little bit. You go to your checking accounts or the savings and you use a little bit of it. There's no crisis. Autophagy is a strong cellular response to stress of fasting, not to the initial calorie deficit. So we cleared number 1. Autophagy happens after day 2, culminates in day 3. And this is
And
why we
Joseph, just
existed.
to clarify, when you say day 2, you're saying 48 hours.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it seems it's spiking day 3 and day 4, right? And we know that. I mean, you got to go into crisis so that you rejuvenate. You're not in crisis after. If you skip breakfast, you just, which kind of crisis is on the cells, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of savings and checking accounts, and the liver is still fine. So that's clearing. Now, the problem is the number 1 journal of medicine in the world, the New England Journal of Medicine, published a big article talking about intermittent fasting and autophagy. The problem there is that it had the prolonged fast and the fasting mimicking nutrition. We're going to talk more. This is our science. And then in the last cycle of approving this article, they took out the fasting mimicking nutrition because there's only one company that does it, so they want to be promotional, and they kept the content. So you have an article talking intermittent fasting and autophagy, whereas actually this section that proves autophagy, which is after 5 days and 3 or 4 5 days, was taken out. And that's important for history. We have to put it out for people to understand. So it's not the experts were wrong or people were wrong. It's just the science that didn't include the 5 days. They called everything intermittent fasting was not clear enough to help people understand that. Now, so that's clearing autophagy. Now let's clear whether fasting is, because now also there's some trials showing even intermittent fasting, 16 hours, showing positive data on even the metabolic phase, not autophagy, but weight loss and longevity. And some articles are saying not skipping breakfast. That's the biggest question. The second biggest question now. So autophagy, when it happens, second biggest question is skipping breakfast and doing 16 hours. Is it healthy for longevity or not? And this is the answer. The answer is you want to do a front-loaded intermittent fasting, meaning have your dinner early and then front loaded and still have breakfast. So you do 12 to 14, what we call circadian fasting. That 12 to 14 hours is very beneficial, is because it mimics the circadian rhythm. And the 2016 Nobel Prize in Medicine was on autophagy. People talk about 2017 was on circadian biological clock of the organs. So start front load your intermittent fasting instead of what we do today because it's practical, fits our lifestyle. We eat late at night up until 10, 11. We snack over a Netflix or over a computer for work. And then the next day we starve our body when the body and the essential organs need the calorie the most, right? A big reminder for everyone here. The brain is the most active when you go to work in the morning. The muscles are most active during the day. Therefore, the heart rate and the heart needs to beat more during the day than during the night. The kidney functions more. So there's a high demand on calorie in the morning. This is why intermittent fasting you lose weight, but it's essential organ calorie. You don't want to deprive them when they need their calories. At night, you're sleeping, you don't need calories, and then we feed the body at night. And this is why the studies that show 16 hours, meaning you ate late at night, but then you skip breakfast, you go all the way to the afternoon to eat, and most people binge eat at that time, they're not very positive on longevity. Whereas a lot of centenarians, people living 100 and beyond, and a lot of front-loaded intermittent fasting are showing very positive data because it matches exactly the circadian rhythm. The body is sleeping at night, there's less stress, and you have a perfect sleep. And at the same time, you're not feeding the body when it's anabolic during the night, and you're feeding the body when it's catabolic and needs the calories during the day.
I love that. My mentor and naturopath told me the exact same thing. He said, Joel, you just look at Ayurveda. Ayurveda has been talking about this for years. And guess what? That's what they do. They actually have a bigger breakfast, maybe, and a less of a dinner
Yeah,
because then you
you,
sleep better and you
you
work.
tell
And
this
I
to
love it.
people, they tell you, no, I'm not, I wake up not hungry. And of course, and I always say, if you want a physical sign of you're eating healthy and a longevity sign, if you wake up hungry, it means you're doing something right. If you wake up full, it means you ate late, you have reflux, you have a little bit of abdominal obesity, and you didn't sleep well. And so, for everyone listening here to us, try to have your dinner early. Don't eat anything. Now, we'll talk a bit more about our company, and we do have things that mimic fasting with food. So you can snack at late night a little bit with us. You can eat a little bit, swap your morning and your breakfast with the fast bar or the fasting shake. We can talk more about that. But what I'm trying to say is, a lot of people when they say I cannot eat in the morning, I don't feel, they should pay attention to when they're snacking at night and when they're having their dinner.
Beautiful. Love that. Also, I wanted to ask you, you were talking about day two, 48 hours being the magical sweet spot. I remember reading that 72 hours when we start to see stem cells start to produce, the body produces natural stem cells. So I guess, would there be even more benefit to go beyond 48 hours? And if so, is there a part where after, let's say you go 72 hours or 96 hours, is there kind of a part where the autophagy just kind of dissipates and you're not really getting much bang for your buck? I'm just curious.
It has to all make sense. So let's go back to the same stress on the company, right? Company with no revenue. Bank account first 2 days. That's the metabolic part of fasting. Then there's a stress. The CEO saying, "Wow, I'm losing all my money in the bank. Let me do autophagy. What is autophagy? Let me use internal infrastructure. Let me not overspend on the outside, etc." Now you went on autophagy. He cut the budgets on travel. He tried to do what he can, and he still cannot. It's still the fasting is going longer. No revenues for longer. What would you do? You have to take painful decisions. You got to fire some people, unfortunately, and typically you're going to let go of people that are costing you a little bit more and they're not super high productive. You're going to keep a little bit the cost effective younger one. So when you go to the body, and you can watch the Walter Longo, our founder, his explanation of this on Arte. There's a big Arte TV clip on that. So the body starts getting rid of senescent cells. Your old cell consuming calories doesn't produce, want to kill you, pushes the stem cell, the younger cell, because they do no mistake. They're very young. They're still they still have perfect performance, and they can do much better work with the same amount of calories. So that's the pain of fasting. You go more painful, I take more. So we move from cellular rejuvenation, which is autophagy, to cellular regeneration. You're getting rid of old cell and you're regenerating new younger cells. And and so the longer the fast, the more, and that's the magic. Is why Walter Longo goes for 5 days of fast. When he said, "Oh, 2 days and when the magic," I didn't react because 2 days is half of the magic is autophagy. Day 4 and 5 is where the true magic happens, which is now a cellular regeneration. And this is why Prolon, this is why we recommend that people benefit from the 5 days in not 3 or not 4, is to benefit to lose the weight across and improve metabolism, rejuvenate the cells, and start regenerating some cells. And you need 5 days. You go longer, what you said, again, go back to the company example. I rejuvenated, I tried to use my internal funds, I cut, I fire people, and then I go bankrupt if I continue doing that, right? So then I need money to come back. So this is why going 10 days and 20 days is just going to be depleting then. So the optimal period that is compliant, safe, and induce all three phases of fasting is the 5 day. And still 5 days of water fast is so difficult. And this is what we specialize in, is develop a nutrition formulation that you can eat, but keep your cells and your body in a physiological fast. And that's the key to our existence.
Okay, let's jump right into that because I know a little bit about Prolon and a little bit about the science and the fasting mimicking diet. You mean to tell me, Dr. Antoun, that I can eat a little bit, and you're going to get into the details of the fasting mimicking diet, but you mean to tell me that I can eat a little bit and still get all the benefits of autophagy without having to do a 5 day water fast?
Yeah, as of yesterday, officially, I got the results on autophagy with our fasting food, and it's not eating a little bit. It's 5 days of nutrition. Day one is 1,100 calories. Day two to day five is 800 calories. So you're eating almost 50% of what you would typically eat. And this is what took us 2 decades. It took us 20 years to invent. You mentioned the word Prolon, Prolon, and if people want to visit the site prolonlife.com, it took us 20 years to discover a nutritional formulation that is plant-based, gluten-free, lactose-free, everything you check on being healthy on ingredients that the body can consume and the cells and metabolism stays in a fasting mode. And I'll explain how we biohack the body with that. And we call it the fasting mimicking diet. If you want to read more about the fasting mimicking diet, the best way to go is to buy the longevity diet book by Walter Longo, our founder. I'll keep going back to Walter. He's, Time Magazine top 50 most influential people in health. He won the Jubilee Award, and he's just, if you ask ChatGPT, he's the number one longevity expert, longevity nutrition expert, and number one fasting expert of the world. And so what we did is we said, okay, how does to biohack the body and mimic fasting physiologically, because you're eating food with us, we looked at how the body understands that there's food. And there's two ways the body understands that there's food and therefore goes off fasting. Number one is whenever you eat carbs, insulin increase. Insulin is a growth factor, tells the body, hey, go anabolic, there's food, there's nutrition. And whenever you eat proteins, IGF increase, insulin-like growth factor. So when you eat carbs, insulin tells the body, hey, you can grow, there's food, there's no fasting. And when you eat protein, IGF increase, telling the body the same signal. So we decided that the first step to do, and from a systemic standpoint, to not let the body know that there's calories coming in and food, you have to not spike insulin IGF. Not spiking insulin is a little bit easier because you can have complex carb with a slow absorption rate, different carbs in the morning than at night. There's a lot of secrets in the Prolon, but basically a complex, slow absorption carb mixed with high healthy fats that keeps the body a little bit, it's a little bit like in a keto state, but the body getting saying, well, I'm not sensing that carbs and the insulin doesn't spike, very high. On the protein side is what took us a lot of time because once the body loves protein, actually pushes the body to growing and aging. One of the biggest thing here people need to know is don't over drink your protein shakes. You're not growing the muscle fast every day, but you're growing IGF and you're aging very fast. This is why Arnold Schwarzenegger and a lot of the educated, big bodybuilders are turning down their protein levels and going more vegan on it. But anyhow, so we looked into a specific formulation of amino acid that does not spike IGF. So the first characteristic of the Prolon 5 day fasting mimicking nutrition is it doesn't spike insulin and IGF enough to tell the body to go off fasting. Now, when we looked at the cells, the cells have three pathways, three nutrient sensing pathways. They sense the food. We call them nutrient sensing. The pKa, the TOR, and the RAS pathways. They sense carbs, they sense protein, and they tell the cell, okay, there's enough. Let's go anabolic. We're not fasting. So the prolonged fasting nutrition, a lot of the ingredients go around these receptors and some of them go through the receptors, but we studied what is the switch point where the receptor is telling the cell, well, I'm seeing nutrients, but it doesn't convince, we're not convinced. We're still the same way that CEO of the company, he needs $1 million to operate. You give him $500,000 and you tell him he can only spend it on HR to keep your best employees and on supply chain to order products and to be able to sell the next month. Everything else, we're not funding it. So you go and restructure it. That's exactly what we do at the cellular level. So you're eating the food for 5 days. Prolon is the name, promoting longevity. It's, by the way, now the only nutrition ever to be patented in the US and in Europe on promoting human longevity. Patented, fully issued. And it keeps the body systemically in a fasting mode and the cells thinking that they're still fasting, although you're giving half of the calories per day.
Okay, that's amazing. I wanted to ask you briefly. You mentioned a specific amino acid. Are you talking about leucine? That you're making sure you don't leucine? If I'm correct, the amino acid leucine promotes growth and muscle building. So if I'm taking I don't know, some small protein shake or something,
Yeah.
or some amino acid supplement, BCAAs, let's say,
Uh-huh.
and I'm fasting,
Uh-huh.
is that going to take me out of my fast then? Because I'm using leucine. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not just leucine. Every educated biohacker asks me that first question all the time. Y- y- Because you want to also methionine is important. You don't want to spike IGF, but you want to nourish the muscle. So something we didn't mention here is the fasting mimic nutrition Prolon is also now patented and studied to protect lean body mass. And the last trial we had an increased lean body mass by over 2 pounds.
Wow.
And so what's happening, this is why answering also your first question is fasting calorie deficit or it's a stress. This is why you need to go above 2 days. So when it's a stress, when you have enough fat and you're depleting the first days, it's a calorie deficit mainly. But when you go into the stress phase of after the 2 days, what is the number one hormone of stress? It's a little bit of cortisone or corticosteroid, which is why it decreases inflammation as well, and it helps a lot in the autoimmune disease. But also growth hormone. Growth hormone is a hormone of stress. What does growth hormone do? It pushes muscles, right?
Yep.
Water fast, there's no ingredients, muscle is pushed, cannot do much. Prolon fast, you have macronutrients, you have proteins and you have carbs with mini spikes of insulin and IGF and a growth hormone on top of them. And this is why we have secrets in the dinner. A lot of people call me say, there's a little bit of higher carb in the dinner with Prolon, and I see it on my CGM. Hey, we need to have that insulin mini spike at night to couple the growth hormone spike so that the muscle is protected. And this is why Prolon is the only diet that has a patent on promoting muscle regeneration and protection. You go off Prolon on day 6, you feel high energy, high performance. There's a lot of NBA players and football players that do it, by the way. And it's just cutting fat. It's supporting the muscle rejuvenation and it's critical. Imagine you're a diabetic patient. We just launched a program for diabetes on the fasting mimic nutrition. It's called L-Nutra Health because that's the biggest vicious cycle for diabetic patients. They go on calorie restricted diets or they inject Wegovy or Ozempic now and all of that. They lose a lot of fat, they lose a lot of muscle. The day they stop those, they gain back the fat right away because the engine of burning calories is the muscle and that got depleted. Wegovy and Ozempic, they drop muscle mass by 30%. And this
Wow.
is like a disaster, meaning you're just stuck with them for the rest of your life. And again, because when the body is in low calorie, it it tries to get calories from everywhere, including the muscle. Now, with Prolon, the growth hormone, and the fact that Prolon is a fast with food, it nourishes the muscle and it protects lean body mass. And that's one of the biggest secrets of Prolon, why it gets you back with a great metabolic rate, great performance, and gets you out of, some of the, increase the chance of remission of diabetes and some other health conditions.
That's incredible. You also mentioned IGF-1, insulin growth factor. That is associated with growth. It's still associated with aging and even is it still associated with cancer? I'm a little confused because the studies there
I'm
are now
really happy you asked this question. This is a critical question for humanity today because we kind of we all pointed out at carbs as being the devil and we all switched to proteins, right? And is everyone now is
keto and
happy?
carnivore, which maybe we can talk about right after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the protein craze, right? And we have shown repetitively in mice and in humans that actually, I mean, it's by every doctor studies in biology. It's just when you eat protein, IGF increase. It's called insulin by definition, by even wording. It's called insulin-like growth factor. And and it's a growth factor. This is why it grows muscle. You look great in the short term, but we don't grow anywhere. We grow towards our end. It's a biological acceleration as well. And this is why Ronnie Coleman dies at 55. This is why the very big bodybuilders who ingested a lot of proteins and have injected themselves with growth hormone and testosterone, everything that's anabolic, including IGF, including protein, is actually speeding up your endpoint. It's getting you faster to your endpoint. And so there's definitely a high correlation between IGF and aging. And you should definitely keep IGF. Walter published a meta-analysis what is the ideal IGF? Because if you're low on IGF, you lose muscle. If you're high, you increase risk of cancer and risk of. So there's a sweet spot. It's like cholesterol. There's a sweet spot, and he published a big meta-analysis on that. I think some 6 to 8 months ago. This is a huge paper. Sometimes the most important thing don't get enough credit or notice, but there's a sweet spot of IGF that is ideal between balancing muscle and longevity, and that's a big thing. Um,
I can't wait to dive into that, Joseph, because I'm 41 years old and I constantly struggle with that. As like,
yeah,
I do want to look good and still have some muscle and build it, but I'm also thinking as I age, I have two boys, I want to live long as I
yes.
can. And
Let's
so,
talk
how do
about that.
I bring that
Let's
balance?
talk about that. So point number two is going to be on what to balance. Point number three is something a technology we also devise to help people with that. So why do we advise that people balance the IGF? And if you're very very young, so what is cancer? Well, you asked me about to clarify the correlation between IGF and cancer and therefore longevity because you die from cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's all related to being accelerated and having an accelerated aging rate. Um, Cancer is a cell that it's a normal cell that was trying to replicate. There's a problem that happens when it's replicating. It loses the inhibition of replication. It stops because the cell replicates when it touches other cells. It stops. Cancer is a cell that just decided to be wild. It keeps growing even though it touches. And when it's squeezed, then it goes into the blood, goes everywhere in the body. That's metastasis. So how a mistake happens, and if you increase it with age, right? So the older you are, the more your cell is prone to do a mistake and then become cancerous.
Yeah.
Now, there's an ideal age though, because if you're too young, most of your cells, when we are too young, the cells are replicating fast, but they're young. That's why there's still some cancer in youth because the replication rate is so high when you're young, but the cells are not damaged. This is why there's still some cancer when you're young. But the ideal onset of cancer is between age 40 and 60. At age 90, the cells are not replicating. People don't die at age 90 from cancer. They die at age 90 from Alzheimer's, cardiovascular stuff, the heart stops, it's frailty. They don't die from cancer. You die from cancer between age 55 and 70, but it starts at 40 to 60. And what happens then? The cells are young enough to replicate, they respond to replication, but they're old enough, there's a high level of doing a mistake during the replication. And this is why between age 40 and 60 is very important to control protein and IGF because your cells are a little bit damaged, you're 40 years old, and you're pushing with IGF and protein, you're pushing cellular replication and growth. So you're increasing the chance, the probability of cancer happening. And this is why at mass population level, at this age, you got to be careful. Consume most of your proteins from vegetables because they don't overspike IGF, so plant-based. And you got to go low on the leucine, like you mentioned, and watch out. So at younger age, you can consume more proteins. At older age, your muscle is an organ of longevity. At age 70, 80, 90, then you go back on a higher protein level. That's fine. But that sweet spot of 40 to 60 is why we see the onset of cancer happening there. And this is why we see the correlation. If you eat a lot of meat between age 40 and 60, you're increasing your chances of overstimulating the cells. They're old enough. They still respond to the signals of IGF because they're young enough, they still replicate, but they accumulated mistakes in their DNA and they can become cancerous.
I love that.
So
Talk
now
about,
number three is
yeah, go
solution,
ahead.
right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So
And is this going to tie into the longevity diet, which I really wanted to
yeah,
ask you about? Yeah.
so the longevity diet, and I recommend everyone listening to us here today to read the Longevity Diet book by Walter Longo, international bestseller. And he published an article in Cell. Cell is the number two science of the world, called the Longevity Diet, actually, I think some 8, 9 months ago. So early 2023 or end of 2022 in Cell Longevity Diet. And so what we did is we said, okay, a lot of people say, well, I don't know how to balance my IGF. I'm drinking this brand of protein. So to help, we devised the Longevity Institute at University of Southern California partnered with a top cancer cell research institute in Europe called EFOM. And they together were working. One was interested, the longevity at USC, interested in how to slow aging with finding protein formulation that don't spike IGF. The Cancer Institute is saying, I'm interested in the same, but for cancer reasons, I don't want to overfeed cancer because that's the other big mistake when you have cancer now. It's the fastest moving organ. And then you have companies that sell you high protein diet on cancer so that they feed the body, but actually feeding cancer the most, right? So they both align together. They spend probably $5-6 million over 3-4 years to figure out, and within the plant-based category, how can we find a subcategory that has specific amino acids that even spike IGF even less than the traditional plant-based category. So we licensed that product. They filed a patent on it. We licensed it. We call it the L protein. And I don't know when this episode will air, but we're launching that in October of 2023,
All
and
right.
probably will be a fresh news by then. So you can go buy your L protein, the longevity protein. It's a special subcategory that we identified. You get 25 grams of protein per serving, 21 minerals and vitamins, but your IGF would not overspike as it typically would do with the other proteins. So it helps you if you have cancer, you want to nourish your body without overfeeding the cancer. It helps you for longevity because it doesn't spike the push on the cells and over push the risk of cancer and aging.
Wow. I can't wait for that to come out. Okay, cool. So I can have the best of both worlds, build some muscle, and
Yeah,
also live nice and long.
yeah. That's we call it balance, health, and strength. Yeah,
I love it. Briefly, just touch on keto and carnivore because they're all the rage right now. And you kind of mentioned, I think, some of the things, but I noticed when you were talking about the fasting mimicking diet, you kept referring to plant-based nutrition,
yeah,
plant-based foods. We have
yeah.
a lot of talk saying that plants are killing us on all this stuff. My biggest thing is I look at history and I like to look at what other cultures done. I've never seen anybody eat a diet 80% in fat or whatever it is. I've never seen anybody just only eat meat. So I have a hard time being so dogmatic about nutrition and saying you got to go all in
Yeah.
on keto or carnivore. How do you guys kind of see that? Or what does the research suggest?
And I go back to the longevity diet book because that's a summary of 30, 40 years of research. And we always look at 5 pillars. To find the truth, you need 5 things to come together. You need observational. So we study centenarians. Before we speculate, let's go see what people who lived 100 and beyond, what did they eat, right? Did they eat fat all their life? Did they eat proteins all their life, like animal source of protein? And they definitely were not ketogenic. They definitely were not carnivore. That's very important. If anything, they were pescatarian and flexitarian. So they were eating a lot of plant-based sources, especially in the blue zones and the longevity zones. They were adding fish to it and seafood, and in their stews there was meat as well. uh, Pure steak was very expensive for them and it was a little bit of meat in the Mediterranean stew. That was like looking at some fishing and a lot of salads. That was and grains and high-end nuts, the hazelnuts and macadamia and almonds. That's the essence of the longevity diet. So why is that so? I'll continue the 5 pillars that we follow. So first is look at people who live 100 and beyond and study them. Number two is bring those studies to mice so that you test a lot of variations and you understand what works in the body. What can are the mice staying healthier longer? Yes or no? Then you take it to human trials. Then you study it on systems biology, meaning this is what separates us from pharma because you can see a positive effect in mice and humans, but you might do side effects on somewhere else. And in longevity, you don't want to induce side effects because you're promising people a longer life. They're probably healthy when they start, and then you're inducing a side effect. So it's got to fit systems biology. And making sure there's no side effects when you talk longevity, and then finally evolution and history and human evolution because we've been sculptured by living on this planet. And I want to start with the fifth one here because you were telling me, okay, what kind of nutrition and do we go keto or carnivore, etc. We as humans, if you think about it, where did we live? People say cavemen. We never lived in a cave because there's no food, no water. We maybe were hid if there were animal attacks, we can hide in the cave or sleep, a few nights. But the cave has to be next to the river. We lived around rivers, right? We didn't live on oceans. You cannot drink that water, and there's no trees, and most things cannot grow in an ocean. We lived around rivers. Rivers had water they can drink. Around river, you had grass, you had fruits, trees, bushes. So bushes, you can sleep. So this is how, and so it's plant-based. Fish is the only animal that cannot fly or run fast and is easy to fish. A lot of plant-based, a little bit of fishing, and then when we developed to hunt animals, we added that animal, and this is how we lived the longest periods. Actually, the humans were pescatarian slash flexitarian with the evolution. And so our body, the size of our pancreas, the size of our brain, the size of our jaw is all matched, and the cells and epigenetic reading of our DNA is built to respond to these signals. They're not built to respond to spikes of dessert and sugar. They're not built to respond to spikes of fillets and meat every day. We're not, and we're expressing disease of those. Diabetes is an expression of carbs, and cancer is an expression of proteins, and they both interact. They both increase the chances of each other. And now Alzheimer's is diabetes type 3. So the situation is clear, and it has to make sense. Every time it's my philosophy and approach to religion as well, right? Every time somebody brings something that doesn't make sense, you'll be like, you know what? If anything, God gave us brain first, and then think, and then what makes sense makes sense. Same in nutrition. It has to fit all these criteria. It has to make sense. It has to be proven in people living, and then when you study it scientifically, it's leading to these results. Now, um, if you wanna go and win the Olympics next year, yeah, eat more proteins, of course, So that's, and if you have diabetes and or a brain neurodegenerative issues, on the short term you can do keto because then you have super low carb and you put your body a little bit. The brain loves the keto, so there's a place for the ketogenic diet. It's limited to a very short term metabolic outcome because it's super low in carb, but it's not a longevity diet because the body on a super low carb is not. And we demonized carbs, but carbs is what our body runs on. So you don't eat high carbs, but or short-term chains of glucose or carbs, but they're essential to how the body function every day. So on the short term, keto for diabetes, pre-diabetes, and or for brain neurodegenerative diseases, some of them benefit from that. High protein if you want to be super high in muscle for next year or for you're preparing for the summer or something like that. But if you want to eat for longevity, it's a pescatarian slash flexitarian, so a lot of plant-based. Pure vegan also has not shown to be like it's better than going pure carnivore, but flexitarian and pescatarian seems to be the most aligned with longevity. Going back, did they eat all the time? Our ancestors know they did circadian fasting, the centenarians. They did the overnight, what we talked about, front-loaded, eat earlier dinner. And sometimes during the year, 2, 3 times during the year, there was no food in the winter, or they were migrating. This is when they had their 5 days. Their body was using that to rejuvenate, refix the cells, and help them stay longer. This is where we're bringing some technology. They were saying do the prolonged 5 days. It's the same way with the car race. When you deplete the car, you go on a pit stop. The mechanics come in, change whatever needs to be changed, and the car goes stronger and longer into the race. And so only 2, 3 times per year do your prolon, do circadian fasting every day, and eat your pescatarian and flexitarian diet as a longevity diet.
You nailed it. I wanted to ask you how often should we do Prolon? And I do something similar to Prolon, but I'm definitely going to start implementing now just after talking to you. I do something like that quarterly, so 4 times a year. You said 2 to 3 times is sufficient.
Well, again, the only mistake I did during this entire podcast is I'm generalizing. I have to, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of sub chapters, right?
Yep.
If you tell me, look, Joseph, I have a little bit of a history of my parents died out of diabetes and one out of cancer. I have a chronic inflammation or something like. Then I say, okay, you gotta be more preventative. Do it 4 times a year. If you tell me, no, I'm healthy, my BMI is healthy, my inflammation rate, HCRP, and everything else is good, then I'll tell you do it 2 to 3 times. You don't need all the time to do for it. But in between, do the L protein so you don't spike your IGF in between. Do the fast bar in the morning, the fasting shake because you don't spike insulin or IGF. We have a full Prolon now is a full suite of products that not just rejuvenate you with the Prolon 5, but also does not on a daily basis overspike your insulin and IGF. Therefore, you're aging slower because that's my end goal. If you ask me what is the Prolon end goal is reverse your biological age with the 5 days and slow down your aging rate with the others so that when you're 50 and 60 and 70, instead of getting your heart attack, you're actually only 30 and 40 and 50, and you're not going to get that first heart attack. We want to give you back 10 years or plus of healthy life by keeping you biologically younger.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about Prolon, the fasting mimicking diet. I know we've kind of danced around it a little bit, but kind of, explain if someone's like, man, they're listening to this, like, I got to do this. What can they expect? What does it kind of look like?
So to read more, it's Prolon Life, the website, prolonlife.com, and you can go and read the full explanation. But basically, they're getting a kit at home I actually, if this is going to go on video, I have one right here on my right side. I can see it now on a
Yep.
video. But
I
you
will.
get it, you get a box, you open it, and you have sub boxes, box one, two, three, four, five, and you have a a drink, a bottle for your drinks. And you open every day. You have one day that you open the carton, and then you have your food for the day. It starts with the bar in the morning, the fasting bar that we talked about to replace your breakfast, and you have soups for lunch with olives and with the snacks, and you have your supplements. Two supplements. One is an vegan alga oil, and one is to give you the minerals and vitamins. Then at night you have your other soup, and you have you have an afternoon snack, which is a chocolate chip, actually, chocolate base, dark chocolate base snack that doesn't spike insulin or IGF, no butter and no low carbs, and then you have your dinner, which is a soup, and then crackers with it, and throughout the day you have a drink that you pour, and it keeps your muscle and your body with basal energy. So it's super well studied. You mentioned that you do your own version. Super non recommended. I'd rather send you a free one rather than you do, because any one of the metrics goes off, your body goes off fasting. You'll be doing then a 5 day of calorie restriction without doing the rejuvenation. It's so critical. And we did play with it, sometimes want to improve taste, sometimes, and then you look at it and it doesn't mimic fasting. So it took us, again, 2 decades. Prolon alone was over $36 million in research. And now we have over a million consumer of Prolon. So this is precision formulation at its best. You want your body to be fed, and you don't know. Some people say, "How come it's precision?" The guy who weighs 240 pounds is the same as the guy weighing. They're all in that fasting mimicking zone, but once one of them goes faster, if you're skinny high metabolism, you go into autophagy a little bit sooner than the next person that has more reserve. But they're both being nourished, and we tested on multiple BMIs, the low BMI and the mid and the high and overweight and obesity, and they go into autophagy and rejuvenation at different times, but they get into the fasting because the formulation doesn't spike insulin and IGF.
Yeah, that's really really cool. I was just curious too. Do if someone wants to just fast and they want to get, maybe they don't want to do a 5 day prolon fast, but they just want to get some of the benefits of fasting. Are there other supplements that maybe you use, or could I use a fast bar? Like, maybe I want to do a 3 day fast,
Yeah.
but I want to, I don't want to go. I got to work. I got a podcast to do. I got 2 kids. I got to be functional, man. And maybe I'm not doing the Prolon fast. Is there like some of the fasting bars or the shakes that I could use to kind of keep me in that fasted state as well?
Yeah, so the fast bar and the fasting shake are a meal replacement. So you can replace one meal, say breakfast or lunch or dinner. A lot of people do them for breakfast and actually a snack. A lot of us, we stay late at night. A lot of people, instead of reopening the fridge and getting that extra slice of pizza or whatever you had for dinner, or burger, or whatever stew, they do the fast bar, the fasting shake. We did test it on humans. We showed that if you do that extra fast bar at night or fasting shake, or you stay on water after your dinner, they have the same ketones and the same blood sugar the next morning. So this is great. So if you want to replace a meal or have a snack that's healthy, you can do the fast bar and fasting shake. If you want to do a full day, we have a product called Reset. It's one day of Prolon basically, so you can do Reset for one day or 2 days. I don't recommend you do 3 days in a row and just stop. If you went all the way to 3 days, do the Prolon, because
Yeah.
you're touching on autophagy. The difficult day is day three when people do Prolon. And by the way, it has 93% compliance, so it's long enough to induce the benefits, but it's short enough to be done. But there's a difficult day three. Day three, and this is what autophagy, right? We always say it should make sense, right? The first 2 days anyone get by. Day three is where the body and the microbiome, a lot of people say, well, I'm feeling different. There's something happening to my entire body on day three. And this is the body saying, I cannot trust now just the liver and the glycogen and the fat. I got to autopilot the cells and do autophagy and roll on my own and live on the ketones in the meantime. And this is what day three is. Day four and five, once you cross day three, you feel like high a little bit, like the energy is up, muscles are rejuvenating, you see something is going into my body, and you ended on day five with mental clarity, focus, performance, weight. You lose the weight, but again, its muscle is protected, so that high performance on day six is very rewarding.
That's amazing. I can't wait. I can't wait to get started. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. I want to wrap things up with you. Any just any exciting projects that you guys are working on? I mean, you mentioned the protein coming out in the fall. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, if we just launched last month the first ever fasting nutrition to for diabetes remission and regression, and we did two trials on diabetes, and it's showing that if you do the 5 day, it's like a Prolon but for diabetes version. So 5 day fasting mimic nutrition. It's called L-Nutra Health. L-Nutra is the name of our company, L-Nutra, and lnutrahealth.com. If you know anyone with diabetes, we are showing that in 6 months, so 5 days a month for 6 months, 5 times 6 is just 30 days, two-thirds of the patient reduced their medication, and many of them were off medication of diabetes. Diabetes, this is what brought me, honestly, as a physician to L-Nutra, is diabetes is a disease that we learned. We start with metformin, then you add another sensitizer or a producer, then you add third, then GLP, then injectable, and then insulin. And it was that we never studied diabetes as, after a year they'll be off diabetes, or it was always a progressive disease. For the first time now we have, and diabetes, 80% of diabetes type 2 is a disease of overweight. And what a miracle, what a big surprise that fasting is the fastest way to reverse it. So it just took humanity's couple hundreds of years to figure out that the solution is just not to inject or to take another pill. The solution is to help people go. Now, of course, it wasn't easy because we're putting them on chronic, everyday healthy diet. They lose muscle, they lose weight and muscle. The day they stop, they get back the weight. This is why a lot of diabetic patients, they feel their helplessness, we call it, because they go on a diet, they stop a little bit, they give back the fat, they become more insulin resistant, they're frustrated. They go to the meds, same things happen. And this is why that fasting is a very short intervention, but flips quickly the fat out and rejuvenates the cells. So the engine is burning calories fast because muscle is the engine of burning the carbs, and you got a lot of fat out, so you decrease insulin resistance. You're working on both sides of the diabetes river, and then you get the patient out of it in a much faster way than typically you would.
On that note, do people work out when they're doing the Prolon fast, 5 day fast?
In a mild way, again, you can stretch, you can do your yoga, you can do your dumbbells if you do that, but don't go run 10 miles. Some people do, but we don't. Definitely, we say take it easy those 5 days.
Yeah. Last but not least, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
This was fantastic. I think you being very smart and savvy and asking the trendy and the last questions. I think we unlocked a lot of things today for people when autophagy happens, what kind of true intermittent fasting is leading to longevity results, how many times to fast per year, what is the fasting mimicking diet and how to use it. And we touch on the longevity diet on how to eat and when to eat. So that was amazing. I think a lot of your listeners would and I appreciate you much as well today.
Yeah, no, this was super helpful, and it definitely I was excited to talk to you about these things because he was racking my brain. I mean, I'm someone who follows the science and follows a lot of these, high. I don't want to call them influencers because they're not, but some of the people, some of these are PhD guys. So it's really nice to talk with someone who knows his stuff, and this is going to change a lot of lives. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you very, very much. And I did promise you that we're going to change somebody's life. I believe we did, and we'll get those emails after. And I always get those, and hopefully we keep amplifying the voice of science.
Yeah, Dr. Joseph Antoun, tell everybody just where they can find you guys, your work, connect with you on social media, and just learn more
Yeah.
about what you guys are up to.
If you want to read more about the company and what we stand for and the mission and the story of the founder, again, Professor Longo, go to lnutra.com, l-nutra.com. L stands for longevity through nutrition. If you want to read specifically about the products, go to prolonlife.com for the longevity and so to Prolon fast bar, fasting shake, etc., and the L protein. If you want to read more about the diabetes reversal, or you have somebody, your parents, your sister, your husband, anyone that you want to help, go to lnutrahealth.com. You can see the medical, they're part of the company. And if you want to follow me, I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and some of the traditional platform, all of them at Dr. Joseph Anton.
Amazing. Thanks for being on the show, brother. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you very much. Thank you.